You closed the laptop, you told yourself you were done, you dragged yourself to bed completely exhausted, and then your brain just wouldn't stop. The client call you replayed 3 times. The email you forgot to send. The thing you should have delegated 2 weeks ago. You're lying there in the dark, running the whole day back, and sleep feels like something happening to other people. Here's what nobody tells you. Trying to fix that at 10 p.m. is already too late. Sleep isn't a nighttime problem. It's a daytime pattern, and it gets decided by how you ran your morning, your afternoon, your 4 o'clock slump. Stress doesn't clock out when you do. It travels with you right into your pillow. And science now shows us exactly how it gets there. So in the next few minutes, I want to show you what a stress-driven day actually does inside your body, what a resilience-driven day looks like instead, and the 3 places your day is quietly stealing your sleep tonight. What a stress-driven day actually does to your brain and body. Let's start with what's physically happening, because this isn't just about feeling frazzled. When you hit a genuinely hard stretch of work, a difficult conversation, a deadline that moved, a problem you didn't see coming, your body activates what's called the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. That's the hormonal chain that releases cortisol into your system. Cortisol is useful, it sharpens focus, it mobilizes energy, it helps you deal with the thing in front of you. The problem isn't the spike. The problem is what happens when the spike doesn't come down, because your day never gave it a reason to. By the time evening hits after a high-stress day, your cortisol curve has flattened out in the worst possible way. Research on white-collar workers found that high-stress weeks produce significantly increased evening cortisol levels and shorter total sleep time compared to lower stress weeks. Your body is still primed for threat detection at the exact moment it's supposed to be winding down. That's why you feel wired and tired at the same time. Exhausted in your body, alert in your brain, scanning for the next problem even when there isn't one. Now here's the part that changed how I think about this completely. It's not actually the stress that wrecks your sleep, it's the replay. Rumination, that mental habit of repeatedly turning a stressful event over and over in your mind, is the mechanism that carries work stress into your sleep. A 2019 study published in Frontiers in Psychiatry, which looked at over 1,000 people, found that rumination partially mediates the relationship between stressful life events and poor sleep quality, accounting for more than 40% of that effect. So the stressful day starts the fire, but the replay loop is what keeps it burning at 11 p.m. And this makes sense when you think about how a typical high-stress day actually unfolds. You've had back-to-back calls since 9 a.m. You ate lunch at your desk, half reading something while the other half of your brain was still on the last conversation. A difficult client email landed at 6 p.m, right as you were mentally trying to close out. By 9 p.m, you're scrolling, not because you want to, but because your brain needs somewhere to put all that unprocessed noise. That's not decompression, that's a holding pattern. The scrolling feels like rest because it's low effort, but your nervous system is still receiving input, still making tiny micro assessments, still slightly activated. And when you finally put the phone down and close your eyes, the silence just lets all that earlier material rush back in. What's happening underneath is that your nervous system never got a clear signal that the threat was over. Fight or flight doesn't know the difference between a predator and a difficult quarter. It just knows you never gave it permission to stand down. So it doesn't. And you lie there exhausted, running the client call for the 4th time. And that's the stress-driven day. And once you see the mechanism, you start to understand why trying to fix sleep with a lavender candle and an eye mask isn't going to cut it. What a resilience-driven day looks like, and why it sleeps differently. So that's what stress does when it has nowhere to go. But here's what most people miss. It's not just about having a hard day. It's about whether you have the internal resources to process it before it follows you to bed. Resilience isn't a personality trait you either have or you don't. It's not about having easier days, softer clients, or a lighter workload. It's about how quickly your nervous system can recover between stressors, so the stress from 10 a.m. doesn't still be sitting in your body at 10 p.m. That recovery speed is the difference. And research backs this up directly. A 2019 study in Frontiers in Psychiatry found that higher psychological resilience moderated both the direct and indirect effects of stressful life events on sleep quality. Meaning resilient people slept better even on genuinely hard days, not just calm ones. The stressors were still there. The difficult conversations, the pressure, the decisions, all still real. But the impact on sleep was measurably reduced. The variable wasn't the difficulty of the day, it was the capacity to recover from it. I want you to think of this as a stress runway. A resilience-driven day doesn't save all the recovery for bedtime. It builds micro-recoveries in throughout the day. Short windows where your nervous system gets a signal that it can come down a little before the next demand hits. And those small descents stacked across 8 or 9 hours mean that by the time evening comes, you're not trying to decompress from a full day of accumulated tension in a single 20-minute window. The runway is already there. So what does this actually look like? It looks like a real lunch break, not eating while scrolling your inbox, but genuinely stepping away from work input for even 15 minutes. It looks like a mid-afternoon cognitive offload, which I'll come back to in more detail later, where you write down every unfinished task and open decision so your brain stops carrying them. And it looks like a hard stop time that you actually respect, not as a rigid rule, but as a signal you send to your nervous system that the demands of the day have a boundary. The evening difference is stark. After a resilience-driven day, your nervous system has already started its descent by the time you're cooking dinner or talking to someone you love. You're not trying to land a plane at full speed on a 200-foot runway. The approach started hours ago. Sleep becomes something you arrive at rather than something you chase. Now, I want to name something specific here because it comes up constantly with the women I work with. There's a belief pattern, particularly common in female entrepreneurs, that stopping equals falling behind. That the moment you step away from the work, someone else is moving faster, the inbox is filling up, the momentum is slipping. That belief feels like ambition, but functionally it's a threat signal, and your nervous system responds to it like one, keeping cortisol elevated, keeping the scanning active, making rest feel either impossible or guilty. Building a resilience-driven day isn't about doing less. It's about interrupting that belief pattern at the behavioral level, because what you do consistently teaches your nervous system what's safe. Every time you take a real break and nothing catastrophic happens, you're updating the threat assessment. Every time you stop at a set time and the business is still standing the next morning, you're conditioning a new response. That's not soft advice. That's how behavioral change actually works. The structure of your day is a message you send to your body about whether it's safe to recover. Resilient days send that message repeatedly. Stress-driven days never do. The 3 places your day is stealing your sleep. Knowing the difference between a stress-driven day and a resilience-driven day is genuinely useful, but it's still abstract unless you know exactly where to intervene. So let me get specific, because there are 3 predictable places inside your average day where sleep is being quietly stolen from you, and most people walk right past all 3 without recognizing them. The first one happens before you've even gotten out of bed. If your morning starts with your phone, checking messages, scanning notifications, opening email while you're still horizontal, you've already put yourself in reactive mode before your nervous system has had a chance to orient to the day on its own terms. So you've handed the first moments of your attention to someone else's agenda, and that sets a particular pattern in motion. Your brain learns that waking up means immediately scanning for problems. Over time, reactive mornings become ruminative evenings because you've spent the whole day in response mode with no moment of intentional reset. The behavioral pattern is clear. The trigger is waking up. The routine is reaching for the phone. The reward is the feeling of being caught up. except you're never actually caught up, and your nervous system pays the cost of that loop every night. The second place is in the middle of your workday, and it's more insidious because it's disguised as productivity. Skipping breaks isn't a neutral choice. It's borrowing energy from a finite account, and the interest rate is paid in cortisol at bedtime. What's important here, and this is backed by organizational stress research, is that difficulty unwinding after work is one of the strongest predictors of disturbed sleep. Not workload alone, unwinding difficulty. Two people can have the exact same number of hours and tasks and pressure, and the one who never paused during the day will take that activation home in a way the other person won't. The work itself isn't the only variable. The absence of recovery during the work is what pushes cortisol into the evening hours and keeps it there. Every hour you push through without a real break is another hour your nervous system doesn't get the signal that it's safe to come down even slightly. The third place is the one most women feel defensive about because it genuinely feels like rest. The evening scroll, the glass of wine, one more episode. These feel like you're decompressing, and in a very limited sense you are. You're distracting yourself from the unprocessed tension of the day. But distraction isn't recovery. Scrolling keeps your brain in passive stimulation mode, receiving input without ever completing a processing cycle. Alcohol suppresses the deeper stages of sleep, so even if it helps you fall asleep faster, you're trading sleep onset for sleep quality. And staying up for one more episode is a form of what researchers call revenge bedtime procrastination, reclaiming time that felt stolen by the day at the direct expense of sleep. The temporary reward of control over your evening costs you the restorative sleep your next day actually needs. Now here's what matters about all three of these patterns. They're not character flaws. They're learned behaviors with a trigger, a routine, and a reward. And that structure means they can be changed using behavioral substitution, not just willpower. You don't break a habit by deciding to stop. You break it by replacing the routine while keeping the reward intact. So for each of these three places, there's a swap. Before the phone in the morning, 2 minutes of writing down one priority for the day. During the afternoon, a 10-minute open loop closure where you write down everything unfinished so your brain stops carrying it. And in the evening, something physical, something that uses your body rather than your eyes and your feet, something that signals to your nervous system that a different kind of time has started. Which brings me to what that actually looks like in practice. The resilience blueprint, building your sleep runway. So let me give you the actual structure because this is where it gets practical. The blueprint has 3 layers and they map directly onto the 3 problem points we just covered. Morning intention, midday recovery, evening transition. You don't need all 3 working perfectly from day one. You need one of them working consistently and the others will become easier once the first one is in place. The morning layer is the simplest and it doesn't require waking up earlier or adding anything complicated. Before you open email, before you check your messages, do one non-reactive thing. That's it. 2 minutes of sitting quietly with a cup of coffee before the screen comes on. Writing one sentence about what matters most today. A slow walk to the kitchen without your phone in your hand. These aren't productivity hacks, they're nervous system signals. So you're telling your body that you get to orient to the day before the day orients you. That's a conditioning practice and it compounds over time. The midday layer is what I call the cognitive offload. At some point in the afternoon, around 3 p.m. works well for most people. Stop and write down every open loop in your head. Unfinished tasks, decisions you've been putting off, things you meant to follow up on, worries that keep floating up. Get them out of your working memory and onto a page. This isn't journaling. There's no reflection required. It's a brain dump, and its purpose is physiological. Your nervous system can't easily release what it's still actively holding. Once those items are written somewhere you trust, you've given your brain permission to stop monitoring them. That's a genuine cortisol lowering mechanism, not a metaphor. The evening layer shifts the question. Most wind down advice focuses on what to stop doing. I want you to focus on what to start doing instead. Something physical, something that uses your hands or your body, cooking, a short walk, stretching, anything that moves your attention from your thoughts into sensation. That shift from mental to physical is a direct route out of rumination and into the kind of presence that lets sleep actually arrive. The behavioristic principle running underneath all three of these is consistent. You're not fighting stress, you're conditioning a new response to it. Each time you run this sequence and your nervous system recovers a little faster, you're training a pattern. The runway gets longer every time. Sleep isn't a nighttime problem, it's a daytime pattern. And the women who sleep well aren't less busy, they're just running their days differently. Pick one layer from this blueprint and try it for 5 days, just one. If you want to go deeper, the next video walks you through the full pre-sleep routine that makes the evening layer actually stick. I'll link it right here.